House Republicans voted in large numbers against a bill that would provide emergency funding to address the nationwide shortage of baby formula, while a smaller number of Republicans voted against a second bill that would make it easier for poor families to buy formula. Instead, Republicans would much rather exploit the crisis to rail against immigration. For more on this, it's time for a closer look. In case you have any doubt at all that reality is in fact a simulation and we're all just test subjects in some giant computer game being jerked around for the entertainment of our celestial overlords, here's an extremely and shockingly real clip of former President George W. Bush giving a speech yesterday where he discussed Russia's invasion of Ukraine and accidentally confessed to being a war criminal.
Russian elections are rigged. Political opponents are imprisoned or otherwise eliminated from participating in the electoral process. The result is an absence of checks and balances in Russia and the decision of one man to launch a wholly unjustified and brutal invasion of of Ukraine. Iraq, anyway. 75.
You know, when I started this show, I poured exactly one shot of whiskey and left it in the drawer of my desk for an emergency. And throughout the entirety of the Trump presidency, I resisted using it. But you know what? I really am certain that clip was designed in a lab to melt the brains of anyone who was alive in 2003. Back then, if you had called the invasion of Iraq brutal and unjustified, the Bush administration and Fox News would have spent an entire week calling you a traitor, and anytime you went to the airport, the TSA would have given you the full cavity search. Well, Mr. Myers, if it isn't 3.5 ounces of toothpaste. Squat and cough, joke boy. Remember, this was a time in our history that was so hysterical and intolerant of dissent that people started calling French fries freedom fries because France opposed the war, which was both petty and pointless, especially because we only did it for French fries. We didn't change French kissing or French doors or Mr. French, and we didn't all pretend that Larry Bird was from Freedom Lick, Indiana. You know what people don't remember is that to retaliate, French people started calling American cheese disgusting 100 years ago. There is a direct line from Bush to the modern GOP. The Trump Republican Party is the natural evolution of the Bush Republican Party, which was lawless and authoritarian and used culture war hysteria to stir up resentments and scare voters the same way the modern Republican Party does now. They've just switched to different topics. Back then, Bush wanted to amend the Constitution to ban gay marriage. Now Republicans want to take baby formula away from migrant children in government custody.
Our border children, the illegal immigrant children, are getting formula.
American families, there's a shortage, but if you're a migrant, don't worry because Uncle Sam has a stash of that.
These are not people that respected our borders, our laws, and our sovereignty. Why wouldn't all the pallets go to American families first?
Apparently, there's no shortage of baby formula for illegal aliens. Why are we feeding illegal babies ahead of American babies?
Illegal babies? Are you out of your mind? You know what? I think I'm finally gonna drink that whiskey shot. Oh, right. I already had it today. I made it almost 1,300 shows, and then I need it twice in one look. Look, as a rule, if you ever find yourself uttering the words, "Why are we feeding illegal babies?" or even just the words "illegal babies," that's when you need to go in for a CAT scan to see if the doctors can find your soul. No, we're looking, and it's just a giant blank void where the soul should be. Also, again, think about how insane and immoral the phrase illegal babies is. Babies can't be illegal. They can't commit crimes. You've never seen a gang of babies on motorcycles holding up liquor stores. And even if you did, it'd be cute as I mean, my God, these are babies, by the way, in the government's custody. It would be, to put it mildly, a moral abomination and crime against humanity not to feed them. And on top of being ghoulish and horrific, it wouldn't even solve anything.
First of all, how many babies are there at the border? A few hundred? Maybe 1,000? Government doesn't release the exact number. It's somewhere in that ballpark. In the United States, there are about 3.7 million babies, okay? So clearly, the border babies hogging all that formula is not the problem here.
This assumes, of course, that the doofuses over at Fox News are capable of doing math. Have you ever really looked in Brian Kilmeade's eyes? There is nothing there. Sometimes I think he might just be a nanny cam they set up to see if Steve Doocy is stealing other people's lunch from the staff fridge. Now, you've no doubt heard about the nationwide baby formula shortage, which is a very real and horrifying crisis affecting millions of families that needs immediate action. There are several contributing factors, including a recall in February by one of the nation's largest manufacturers, which shuttered a plant in Michigan, and supply chain disruptions stemming from the COVID pandemic. It's also been difficult to supplement supply with formula imported from Canada, thanks in part to onerous trade restrictions imposed by the Trump administration.
Trade experts say the renegotiated NAFTA deal under the Trump administration made it nearly impossible for Canada to export formula to the U.S.
During the Trump administration, when they renegotiated NAFTA and they made the USMCA, guess what they did? Made it harder for Canada, made it more expensive for Canada to import baby formula here.
I mean, of course, Trump is somehow involved in this. Finding his fingerprints on a screw-up these days is like finding Waldo in a book called Only Waldos.
Hey, that reminds me, Seth.
What reminds you of what, Wally?
I have a new kids book coming out called Where's Wally? It's pictures of me in the studio, and kids try to find me.
Yeah, but aren't you always in the same place, holding cards behind the camera?
Thanks for ruining my book, Seth.
All right. Yeah, I don't know. Apologies, everyone. The new restrictions on formula imports from Canada were implemented as part of a renegotiated trade deal called the USMCA. Trump even branded it. It came up with a very dumb way of getting people to remember the name.
USMCA, right? Like YMCA. Remember, if you have a problem remembering it, just think of the song YMCA. We love that song. USMCA.
Just think of the YMCA, and of course, the village people think of the cop, the cowboy, and of course, the leather daddy. Leather comes from cows. Cows produce milk, and dairy imports are regulated by the USMCA. It rolls off the tongue. It's very natural when you do it. So there are lots of reasons for the formula shortage, and those problems have been magnified by the fact that the formula market is largely controlled by a small handful of corporate monopolies. 4 companies control about 89% of the U.S. market. Any disruption in one of their products will be magnified, whether it's a recall for Similac or inability to source ingredients. A few companies in the market relying on the same source creates a much more fragile supply chain. Yeah, because you can't have a small group of companies all depending on the same sources for the same ingredients. Otherwise, crises like these will be inevitable. It's like if the only place you could go to get yourself clean, have a good meal, and do whatever you feel was the
YMCA.
It does make it easier to remember. So, now obviously it is on the Biden administration and Congress to fix the crisis immediately. Biden announced that he's invoking the Defense Production Act to produce more formula. The FDA reached a deal to open the shuttered plant, and the House passed an emergency funding bill to address the crises. And yet, you'll never guess who voted against the emergency funding bill. Wait, sorry, of course you can guess. Almost every Republican.
We'll start with a bill that would send $28 million to the Food and Drug Administration to help boost formula supply and prevent future shortages. Only 12 Republicans voted for that measure. House Democrats say the emergency funding would be used to increase the number of FDA inspection staff, help the agency stop fraudulent baby formula from entering the U.S. marketplace, and improve data collection on the formula market.
Only 12 Republicans voted for a bill to address the nationwide formula shortage. You know, I'm starting to suspect that maybe their criticisms aren't exactly genuine. I mean, when I saw that 192 Republicans voted against an emergency funding bill for the FDA, my first question was,
why?
Seriously. How can you be against a bill like that? It's like being the one guy in the office who's against free pizza for lunch. I'm sorry, what am I supposed to do with the catfish I just warmed up in the microwave? So the House passed 2 bills. One was an emergency funding bill to address the shortage, and almost every Republican voted against it. Another bill would make it easier for low-income families to buy formula, and that bill got much more bipartisan support.
The House also passed another bill called the Access to Baby Formula Act. That final vote came down 414 to 9, and the bill would allow more formula to be purchased with money from a federal program that aids low-income women, infants, and children.
Supporting a bill like that would seem like a no-brainer, and yet somehow there were still 9 Republicans who voted against it. Andy Biggs of Arizona, Lauren Boebert of Colorado, Thomas Massie of Kentucky, Clay Higgins of Louisiana, Matt Gaetz of Florida, Chip Roy of Texas, Paul Gosar of Arizona, Louis Gohmert of Texas, and Marjorie Taylor Greene of Georgia. Hearing that list of names is like hearing the roll call at a Legion of Doom meeting. I mean, who else voted against this bill? Skeletor? I'm just kidding. Skeletor's not in Congress. He's the president's lawyer. You guys. Also, I gotta say, at least with Skeletor, you know what you're getting. Dude's a giant maniacal skeleton in a hoodie. He's upfront about being evil. He-Man's under no illusions about who he's dealing with. He-Man never started an episode saying, hey, maybe we should hear Skeletor out. The nationwide formula shortage is an urgent crisis that requires immediate action, and yet for all their bluster, Republicans have once again made it clear they have no interest in actually governing or helping solve the problem. If you're feeling down, they just want you to pick yourself off the ground because you're in a new town and head to the
USMCA.
This has been A Closer Look. God's Love We Deliver cooks and brings over 2 million meals a year to men, women, and children living with HIV/AIDS, cancer, and other serious illnesses, and they need your help now more than ever. If you're watching this online, you can hit the donate button. Stay safe, get vaccinated. We love you.